Peoples for Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, is arguably the largest and most known animal rights groups in the world of today. PETA has come a long way with milestones that could be debated as successful. PETA was founded in 1980 and their mission is to protect the rights of animals. Basically, they are against animal abuse, experimentation, wearing, and the consumption of animals. Since the founding of PETA in 1980, campaigns have been created to raise awareness for animal abuse. Members of PETA have been fighting hard for animal rights and welfare. PETA's main areas of focus are on animal farms, experimentation laboratories, clothing industry, and the animal entertainment industry like zoos and circuses. In principle, the net permits a new arena of grassroots politics. Possessing an open and public nature is its most promising quality of any theory of democratic renewal since. At the very least, it has the potential to replicate the old ideal of a debating public. Barry Axford and Richard Huggins argued that the public debate and discussion is the core concept of democracy. It is also argued that the newly evolved public sphere has the qualities of the traditional public sphere. PETA started its movement in 1980, where the internet was pretty much unheard of. Initially, the internet was not part of the movement, but success was still achieved by using traditional mass media like TV, print, radio, and even physical protests on the streets. The web is a communication meeting place in which public opinion and individual and collective identities are formed. Judy Motion argues that the internet itself is a public sphere on its own. This interactive and relationship-based medium plays an important role for public discourse. With the rise of the internet, it is argued that the original concept of the public sphere has evolved from a physical state to a hybrid of physical and virtual. The public sphere no longer communicates as one-to-one or many-to-one, but instead, it communicates as many-to-many now. The net is a special kind of medium, differing from earlier modalities in the range of its applications and impact. Axford and Huggins argued that the internet has brought the public sphere into a whole new level, which is potentially better. This is because the new media has a much wider reach and public discourses are able to happen anytime and anywhere. With the rise of the internet and social media, it definitely benefited activist groups like PETA in terms of the increase of reach, accessibility, and to the creating of viral communication. The internet also allows activist groups like PETA to persuade the public into donations, signing of petition, and even getting celebrities involved to strengthen the credibility of the campaign. With the help of social media and popular culture, anyone can use cultural jamming to flame animal products and testing. Of course, there are some ways of cultural jamming can be argued as vandalism, or it could be said as freedom of expression. There are always two sides to the story. One example would be an activist group that is against PETA. The Center for Consumer Freedom Group started a movement called PETA Kills Animals. This movement is basically exposing unethical acts of PETA. So, negativity could be greatly amplified with this new form of public sphere. Is the internet a shallow substitute? For the case of PETA, the group claims that you will be able to end animal testing in just 60 seconds. All you need to do is just to fill in your particulars and click on the send message icon. What that basically does is that PETA will send out an email of objections and disapproval which they have crafted to the organizations they are using animal testing. It is a form of protest and petition in a way, but I'm not so sure about the actual outcome. Internet unleashes beyond governmental politics in the domain of social movements. Here it suffices to summarize three of the claims being made about the political potential of the internet. Claims which are clearly resonate off the ideas of openness, transparency, and the publicness from the original concept of often click-like. Keys Brands argued that the potential of internet and its key aspects are similar to the ones in the ideal public sphere. Some of the criteria of an ideal public sphere are zero censorship, transparency of participation, and the full extent of access. Zero censorship allows the people within the public sphere to speak freely without any restrictions. This has always been a debated issue, as we know there will always be some sort of censorship. Self-censorship is when we know there might be consequences with some things we say. For the case of PETA, the animal rights groups has always been known to voice out daringly and set uncompromising standards in the battle for animal rights. The transparency is the participation in public discourse without any interference by public relations and advertising. It is argued that PR companies and advertisers often jump on a bandwagon in the name of goodwill. For example, Dove's Real Beauty campaign and Always Like a Girl campaign. But the agenda of these goodwill campaigns are often argued as having hidden agendas to benefit the companies themselves. Lastly, the full extent of access is the ability to participate in communication fully within the public sphere. Let's say the public sphere we are speaking of is the new hybrid of physical and virtual public sphere. But studies have shown that only 42.3% of the world's population has access to the internet. So what about the other 57.7%? These 57.7% has to be missing out on something. The ideal public sphere is dead. The traditional public sphere has definitely evolved into a new state of hybrid, which has the physical aspect and also the virtual aspect. This new state of public sphere is beneficial for activist groups like PETA, where there is a wider reach and easier accessibility. There are certain downsides for the new media associated with the public sphere. Example, internet being a shallow substitute, the amplification of anti-PETA and not being able to have full extent of access, which is supposedly mentioned in the ideal public sphere. But the delivery and reach of PETA's awareness by the combination of the traditional and new communication, it is still potentially incredible. So in conclusion, yes, I believe activist groups like PETA will benefit from tapping on the new media's aspect of the public sphere. This allows them to have greater reach and more accessibility.